everybody. My dad thinks his podcast is amazing, so please subscribe, give it 5 stars or whatever, and maybe he'll finally stop talking about it. Anyways, welcome to Sobriety.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This week we have a very, very special guest of mine, my good friend, Lynne Doom. Welcome to the show, Lynne. Hey Lynne, how are you?
Hi guys.
Hi. I love your scarf.
You look beautiful today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Ryan, it's great to see you. Jessica, it's so nice to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you too. I've heard so many wonderful things.
Oh, that's sweet. Ryan's always been somebody that I've enjoyed following on Reframe and his Instagram. And when he decided to do this podcast, I was so excited for him. And I really thought it was going to be, him and the Reframe community. And after the first one, I saw you and I texted him right away. He didn't even ask for my opinion. I just said, you've got to do this with your wife every single time. She's gold. So I'm thrilled to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, the idea at first was for it to be like I would pop on every once in a while, but like for it to be him and the sober community. And I think it was after the first episode, or maybe we had like filmed a couple of others to release later. And I was in the bedroom drinking coffee or something, and he walked in and he goes, I need you. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I thought he meant like he needed me to do something around the house, right? He was like, I have to admit, I need you. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, the podcast. Like, I'm so boring on my own. I don't know what to talk about, which is not true.
Well,
but
because I think we were in the middle of doing a podcast and you were sitting behind the scenes and I said, I am fucking boring myself to death. I need you over here talking to me. This is not going to work. This sucks.
Well, and I think it's good to get both sides too, right? Yeah. Like a couple and his sobriety and me, and we have fun. Yeah, I mean, we just talk to each other the way we normally do, and now we just do it for the whole world.
That's right.
And you guys, you rocked it. The Halloween show was the best.
Thanks. We love Halloween, and he was very open and transparent. And I was really proud of him for really like pouring his soul out. I feel like that podcast was really centered around him, and I was really proud of him.
Yeah, I was too. In fact, I was on my way out of town to pick up some supplies for my husband's a contractor. So to pick up some door frames, and I pulled over after listening and I texted him and I said, I can relate, Ryan. Been through that feeling a few times with those puzzle pieces on the floor. So I'm glad you put voice to that.
Yes, thank you. And Lynne, I wanted to give you a big thank you. I know I did at the end of my speaker share, but you've been such an instrumental piece in where I'm at today. Or very, very early on in the meetings, I was kind of like I was last week. I kind of lost my place. I wasn't sure where I fit in. Didn't know really where I was in the community. I was just kind of there. And you reached out to me, which no one had ever done, and just said, hey, there's this really cool group of people and we'd love to have you. And I thought, and I was real hesitant at first because I was like, wow, this is really me opening up to a bunch of people that I don't know. And it was the best thing I ever did. And it's all because you led me there.
Oh, thanks.
And I got into this group. It's like, full of 50 people and all talking about different shit and not really just sobriety. And it was great because then I could feel open. It was great to, hear people's struggles that had been sober for a year. And, I'm just like, 90, 120 days. It was incredible. And it's kind of launched where I'm at today as far as, doing acts of service, acts of kindness, reaching out to other people in meetings that I see are struggling and saying, hey, I got like a men's group. Sometimes I'll say, hey, come into our men's group, check it out. Things like that. It's all because of you. You literally, that was a huge stepping stone in my sobriety. And I really, really thank you for it. I love you for that.
Of course. There's, you wish everybody who joins Reframe finds success. And so when you see certain people and you just know they're going to be successful. You just want to do everything you can to support them. And you do the same thing, Ryan. And there's
Yep.
just some people that you just have a sense of, you were so stoic and you had your mind focused. And after getting to know you, I realized, well, that's not unusual. Everything you do, you give 110%. So it was just really important for me to make you aware of how important you were in the community. And, we're only a year apart. And, we can say that now, when we were maybe 90 days in, that seems like, but we're not that far apart. And so it's been a relationship where I think I get probably more than I give to you. So I've been watching your journey, and you're amazing. You're amazing. Your speaker share
Thank you.
was perhaps the longest speaker share on Reframe, which is okay.
It was.
But I was so proud of you because you took the time you needed to tell your story, and you touched so many people. It was raw, it was real, and now you're doing this. This is so amazing. I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited that I get to be here and chat with you. This is so much fun.
This is great. Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up. This morning someone had reached out kind of to everybody like, hey, have you done a speaker share before? And, how'd you feel? And I was just like, oh, I'm emotionally exhausted. It was like the worst thing in the world. And then the day after, you're like, wow, I really unloaded all that. And it was great. It's actually refreshing. And then it kind of, pushes you into other things like now, doing a podcast literally every week. I would have never thought I would have done this, a year and a half ago. But again, little steps, little things get you to where you are today. And see, there you go. You helped me again.
Absolutely. And 75 for life. Oh my gosh. I tried to do 75
I'm
soft, and I thought I came up with every excuse in the book not to. So when I heard your most recent podcast, and you were talking about, maybe it's your second to the last podcast, when you talked about maybe you feel called to create something of your own, I'm game. I'm excited to see what it is. I'd be willing to try it. So yeah.
I'm in the works with that now. So I'm hoping to have it like first of the year. So, because as you know, in our community, January 1, we get so many people that are sober curious, because they want to do dry January and then kind of lead on. So I'm hoping to do something fun for everybody, in the sober community and outside the sober community to give it a whirl.
Awesome.
So
something to look forward to. Yay.
That's right.
Yeah, we had talked about that. I did 75 hard as well. And then it kind of fell off. And we talked a little bit about like the water challenge. And between that and when you hurt yourself, your shoulder, it just sort of like sparked a conversation about how, 75 hard does not present to be something for everyone. So it's not like it's something that's trying to be inclusive and isn't. And we both accept that. But it can be discouraging for people, and we talked about that whole like starting over on day one and not, kind of wiping out your progress. So I think watching you do 75 hard is amazing, but with you doing it and seeing like the privilege and the luxuries that you have to be able to do those things, it just even furthermore like highlighted, well, what if I didn't have this? What if I didn't have that? Like, we don't have itty bitties in our house. We're not single parents. We have a neighborhood to walk around in. We have money for the app, like just little things that I think a lot of people don't consider. So I was all on board when he was like, I don't know what this looks like yet, but I really want to make a more inclusive something for everybody and making it sort of like a mind, mental, holistic journey that people can do without feeling like, if you can't do something one day, or if, you get COVID or the flu, or like, you go through a family tragedies and it just wipes away all your progress. And I was really proud of him for wanting to do that too. And I think that can be really, really encouraging for people. I love, I'm not a reframer. And I haven't said it in a while since one of the first podcasts, but I'm eternally grateful for Reframe and all of his people. One of the beautiful things about our relationship is we don't expect each other to be everything to each other. And, we are not counselors, and we still have our own shit that we, work through on a daily basis. But we've kind of come to this just wow realization that, we're not just one unit. We're two people who are choosing to share our lives together. And because of that, you get under each other's skin, and you need different communities. Like, I've not heard his speaker share, and I probably won't ever hear his speaker share, and I'll never ask to hear it because it's not for me. And as his wife, I don't assume, and you as my husband too, my partner, like, we don't assume that everything is for each other, right? Because without Reframe, without his community, without you, without all of the other people he's met and being able to expose himself in that light, I don't want to say he wouldn't be here, but like, it wouldn't be as powerful. And I think a lot of people, and that's something that sort of pushed us to do this podcast together, is to remind people that, especially in sobriety and any kind of mental health journey, the people who like love you the most, like your family and like super close friends, I don't want to say that they can be the most detrimental, because that's not true. I'm looking for a better word, but like, they worry. Like, they're not always the people that you can go to first. Because, you come to me and you say like, oh gosh, I'm having a trigger, which hasn't happened. But like, no matter how much I want to be that person, in the back of my mind, I'm going to be going, oh shit. And it's going to show no matter what I do.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say thank you for Reframe. Thank you for all of the things. And just a reminder that like, you need these various communities, and you need these people to reach out to. And I'm just really proud of you. I think an inclusive 75 hard and a podcast, those are things 2 years ago that if I would have brought them, and I think I did bring them to your attention, but
You
for
did
real
bring
estate for
podcasts
me,
up
and you
before,
were
yeah.
just like, I'm not
Yeah, that
getting
ain't
on
happening.
there and doing
He
that,
wasn't ready.
No
Wasn't
way in
his
hell.
time.
It wasn't his time, but look at how beautiful it is now. So
It
I'm just
is.
eternally grateful for all of it. I mean, he always says I'm the star of the show. No, I'm not. I'm just in the background listening and witness.
Well, Lynn,
That's
you're over
fabulous.
2 years sober now. I think your sobriety date's actually, it's June of 2022, correct?
Correct.
So what was kind of like your moment where you decided that I'm no longer going to have alcohol part of my life anymore?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to use some of these cliche terms that we hear. And so I was sober curious for probably a year prior to that June. And I thought to myself, there's got to be something out there that can help me cut back, so that I just feel like there's been too many moments that I've woken up in the morning and I was ashamed of how I behaved, mainly to my husband, things I might have said, or just unkindness. And I would wake up and I would feel anxious and I would feel guilty. And so I thought, there's got to be something out there that can help me figure this out, so I can cut back, so I can drink, like Jessica does, just on occasion. And I happened upon a Reframe, and I was Facebooking or something and, scrolling, and there it was. And so in March, I downloaded it and I started, of course, I went right away to the cutback track, and I was very good about doing the daily tasks for about 5 days. and then I realized that I was on that track. I was really in control of my own destiny. And it was so open. And so I needed some confines. I needed some structure. But I thought, I'm just going to keep trying this. Well, for about 2 months, I ended up probably drinking more than I had prior to downloading the app. I felt like crap about myself because I couldn't do what I said I was going to do, which was, maybe just drink Friday night and Saturday night, or whatever the goal was. I was constantly not attaining it. And so I was really feeling like shit about myself. And so I just kind of disregarded it, put it in the back of my mind. And then, much like some people, especially my age, I went to the doctors and for my yearly blood work, and it came back. There was some concern in a few areas. Some numbers were high, and I thought to myself, this is time for me to either shit or get off the pot. I mean, I need to take care of my health. I need to take care of myself. I've got, at that time, I've got grandchildren, and I want to live a really active retirement life with my husband. And there was just so many reasons. And in the back of my head, one of the main reasons was you obviously cannot moderate. You've proven that through Reframe and the cutback track. And so I downloaded on June 3rd, I downloaded I switched tracks to alcohol free. And I guess that's how I got to the alcohol free track.
That's that's I hear that story a lot. People try to moderate. I mean, I've tried a few times myself too, as I think we all have.
Yeah.
In our community. Yeah, it's just it's funny you say you were drinking more. Because I felt like every time I tried to quit or I tried to get help, it was kind of half-ass, and it just made me want to do it even more. I don't know what that rebellious part of me was, but I was just like, I'll show them.
Yeah.
I'll just keep on doing it. You know what I mean? This isn't going to work for me. I'm just going to keep on going.
When I started Reframe, the tracks were together. We had one meeting at 2:00. Look at all the meetings now, but we had one meeting at 2:00, and cutback and alcohol free were together. And then they switched to, then at 2:30, we'd break off. So I know a lot of people that started on the cutback, and several have switched, but there are still some people that have found success in cutback, and I still, cheer them on. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying for me, it was too much work. I thought to myself, it's got to be easier just to take it all off my plate and be done with it. And it's easier in a different way. It was terribly, terribly hard, but it was much easier knowing that, like one of our reframers says, you can do anything, just don't drink.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, one of the reasons you were looking that route, even just to moderate, was because of, your actions with your husband, the next day, or feeling the guilt and things like that. How has that changed now over the past couple years? And I know you're very open about your husband still drinking as well. So what does that look like now? And how have you had to deal with that?
Yeah. So, and Ryan and I talked yesterday on the phone, and I shared with him, I said, I want to be a little more open, a little more transparent this time when I talk about our relationship when it comes to my sobriety, because sometimes I think those of us that have been around a year or two or longer, people almost look at us like, oh, you make it look easy. And maybe we did, maybe we do. But it was incredibly hard for me to make this decision, knowing my husband's name is Scott, knowing that Scott was not going to join me. And much like you guys, Jessica, Scott and I are very independent. We always have been. We've been married. We just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary last month, or September, August. I mean, can't even remember.
Happy anniversary. So Sorry, I just had to say that.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. But we've always been very independent, When I got married to Scott, my goal was to help make his life happier and easier. And I believe that was his goal for me too. And so, I've tried really hard our entire marriage. If he wants to, try something or go places, and he wants to do it with his guy friends, I'm all for it, because I know in return he's going to support me as well. Looking back though at this journey and being married to somebody who was my drinking partner for 40 years, we had routine, we had habits. That's really what what drinking is all about. It's about an addiction, and it's about the habits that lead to it, and it's about the cues that lead to the habits. And so for the first few months, I had to change the habit of going out on our morning porch and having our evening cocktail for an hour. Well, it used to be cocktail hour for an hour, and then towards the end, it was pretty much all night long. And he understood, but I could tell there was a bit of a mourning that he missed his drinking partner. And if I were to put myself in his shoes, I think I would too. So I had to be very respectful of that he was going to continue drinking, and that it's his house too, and that my journey was going to be selfish enough, in a good way, but selfish enough as it was, without imposing other things upon him. Like, I would have never dreamt of asking him to get rid of all the booze in the house, because this is my journey. And I wanted to be respectful of his house. The other thing is, wherever we go and whatever we do, I knew that alcohol was going to be present, because it always has been. You know, we have the best friends of 40, 45 years, and incredible family. And alcohol has always been a part of our gatherings. And I'm not saying they don't drink responsibly. I'm just saying alcohol, it was always going to be there. So I knew that in the long run, I was probably going to be stronger for it by having to live with somebody who still drank, and by having to live with alcohol in my house. So I knew that I would have to be very, very mindful that this was my decision, my journey, and nobody else's, and not to impose that on anybody. So the first few months were terribly, terribly hard. You know, people say, oh, let's just get through one day at a time. Well, for me, it was, and then people would say, oh, you know, the average urge lasts about 20 minutes. And I thought, I don't know where the hell you guys are at, but my urges sometimes last all day long. It was awful. And then I think week 5 through 8, I was a raving bitch. I was a lunatic. I mean, you could look at me wrong, and, you know, I would cut you down with a sharp tongue. And I wasn't proud of myself, but I let myself do that. Part of me during that time was resentment towards everybody in my world, everybody that didn't have to quit but me, and all the fun things everybody else was doing, but I would do sober. And I was just really on the pity potty. And it was probably about week 9 that I just said, you know, if this is going to work, you're going to have to change your attitude. You're going to have to change your mindset and your goals. And that's when I decided to start documenting my journey, because I did have the Reframe community, which has been amazing. And I give Reframe credit for where I am today. But I didn't have, once I turned the computer off or turned my phone off, you know, I didn't have anybody that understood. And so I started an Instagram, Lynne Living Life, and it is a documentation of just deciding that I was going to beat this and I was going to go on and live my life. So now I am day 885, alcohol free, and my husband continues to drink. And for a while there, I used to always tell people, I still do, you know, it's your journey. You need to focus on your journey. When you focus on other people, you know, it never ends up well. The few times that I've opted to have a conversation with Scott about his drinking, it usually hasn't ended well. And I think it's because of the way I approached it. I think he looks at it like I was trying to belittle him for not joining me, which I haven't. I honestly, I don't feel like, I'm not upset that he hasn't joined me. I think what's been difficult the last year is that I feel like he knows that I'm in it for life. I mean, I love this man to my core. I feel like he's my soulmate. And I want to preface this by saying this is not me trying to say my husband is, some awful person because he drinks. He's not. He's an amazing man. He's the best brother that any of his 6 brothers and sisters could ask for. He's the best father, grandfather, a friend who would do anything for anybody, a successful businessman. He's such a good person, and I am so blessed to be married to him. I think that the last year, my challenge has been not looking at this where our journeys, I feel sometimes are going this way instead of together. I feel like there's a separation in the road, and I'm taking this route and he's taking this route. And in the past, that's always been okay because we're independent, right? I go this way, he goes that way, we always meet. I'm waiting for us to meet again. And so at times I feel like perhaps he's taking advantage of the situation, that he knows that I'm not going to complain and I'm not going to call him out on the nights he drinks too much. Sometimes I feel like he knows that I'm going to be there no matter what, no matter how long our roads are separate. And I don't want that. I want for us to come back together. And I don't know how that looks. This is not an easy road to traverse when you have a partner who drinks. Some nights it's 1 or 2 drinks. Other nights it's enough that he falls asleep on me. And so I try to be very respectful of how I portray him, because his drinking is just one part of who he is. And some of the things that he's really good at, I'm not. He's always been an athlete. He's always been very into physical activity, and I've always strived to achieve that. So, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I just know that this last year has been a challenge for me, because I have to keep thinking to myself, this is my journey. This is my choice. It's hard when you love somebody and you think you have some great conversations at night, and in the morning he asks you the same question over again. And I look at him and I realize that he really doesn't remember. And so I've set up boundaries for myself. I don't go into any in-depth conversation with him after a few drinks. I give myself the freedom to get up and to go do what I want the rest of the evening if it looks like he's going to be choosing alcohol over me. And sometimes that's how it feels. It sometimes feels like that secret mistress, except she's not secret. Somebody he'd rather be with than me. In the same regards, I did the same thing to him. If I try to put the shoe on the other foot, if this was him, 2.5 years sober, and he came to me and asked me, what would you think if I quit drinking? I think I would have supported him. But by God, if he would have asked me, I think you need to quit drinking too, I would have said, I would have said, hell no. Don't expect me to join you just because this is your thing. And so I try to keep that in the back of my mind. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, I'm going to chime in if that's okay, just because I took a lot of nuggets from that. And I first of all want to say, we've had a lot of guests on the show, and I've loved all of them equally. That is one of the rawest, realest, most honest, and heartfelt shares that we've had so far. And everyone's been honest and heartfelt, but I know, and Ryan had told me before we came on here that, you were ready to really kind of like pour your heart out and be more transparent about things. And I want to thank you for being so honest about your relationship. I can, and I think we both can, but I probably more than Ryan can understand what it feels like to be like, I'm talking about this relationship that I have, and I don't want people to associate the person with the subject matter that I'm talking about. And so your husband sounds like a phenomenal person. I can tell that y'all love each other very much. And
I was considering marrying him for a second there. I'm like, Damn, that was a hell of a lead. That was a hell of a build up.
I'm like, I don't know about that. I've always told Ryan, if we get divorced, it's solo forever. But, you know, and I don't know how many of the podcasts you've listened to. You may have listened to all of them.
All of them.
Yeah, perfect. So you already know, but a lot of people haven't listened to others. And I've always been very transparent about, towards the tail end of Ryan's drinking, I had already checked out. Probably even 3-4 years before he got sober. When I started my mental health journey, when I say checked out, not necessarily like, oh, I want a divorce, but checked out in the sense of just separating and not allowing myself to be vulnerable to that sort of, and I will call it like mental or emotional abuse, because he was abusing himself, but also was spilling over to other people. Yeah. And when he got sober, you know, I was not nice to him. And I've said this, like, and when I say nice, I mean, I was like, you know, heard it all before, you know, like just had heard it all before.
Sure.
And, you know, I know what our relationship looks like now, but I want to be very honest with people and let them know, like, I don't want to say mean, but I was still checked out. I was like, I don't give, excuse my language, a flying fuck how many meetings you've gone to. I don't care how many people are telling you you're doing such an amazing job. They don't know you. They haven't been married to you for 13 years. And that's a really nice little mask that you got on there, buddy. And all of those things are valid, right? And it wasn't really until 9 to 12 months in that I thought, okay. And honestly, if I'm being, starting this podcast was really sort of the beginning of us going, okay, I think we actually have a pinky finger grasp on this, not even like two hands. And I still work through a lot of resentment, and we talk about it now, but like the first year that he was sober, I remember getting so frustrated because just human nature being like, okay, so you did all these shitty things for however many years, and now all of a sudden, because you're on this platform and making good decisions, like everybody's like, oh my God, Ryan is so amazing. And and I thought, that's shit. You know, I used to make a joke with him about like, you're not divorcing me, because if you divorce me and you marry someone else, like they're not going to reap the benefits of my hard work. Right. No, I'll look at them and be like, you're actually in love with me, not him. It was a joke, but it took me a while to realize like, that really doesn't have anything to do with him. Those are my insecurities. And I chose to stay married. I chose to stay in there. Even today, I could choose to be like, you know, this is too much and walk away. I'm not going to, but you're right. We each have a path. And I love that you used the word mourning and like OUR. And the reason is because, and we talked about this, there is a grieving process. You know, he had sat down with me the other day at breakfast and was talking to me about a lot of things going on in his head. And I told him, I said, you know, something that people don't talk about is there is a grieving and a mourning process to the person you were. Even if you know what's on the other side Absolutely. Is like amazing and wonderful and all of that, like our best memories, like our wedding and our, you know, honeymoon and how we met and daughters' birthdays and holidays are all wrapped up in when you were drinking. Like still, I mean, you're only about a year and a half into this and we've been married going on 15 years. So 98% of all of our best moments are still in that hole. I call alcohol. In that hole. So there is a grieving process, there is a mourning process. And I even noticed myself like saying, oh my gosh, don't you remember when? And don't you remember? And he would look at me and be like, babe, I love you, but I mean, maybe, but not really. And a lot of people don't talk about that gray area, and it takes a while. We still struggle with that. Like still to this day, we'll struggle with that. Right. And when you're in a relationship, it's hard because it's like you're dating again, but you already have this life together. It's like fully invested. And we talk a lot about, not so much anymore, but like at first we sat down and I'm like, what if we don't like each other? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
because it's like you have to like get to know each other all over again because it's a whole new relationship. And even in the back of my mind, I was like, and I would talk to my friends and my doctor. I'm like, what if he's still a fucking asshole? Like, what if, okay, he's not drinking, so he's not like being mean or passing out. But what if I still think he's a dickhead and I still don't? And I'm like, no, like, then what? Because then that guilt comes on where, what am I going to do? Like leave my husband as he gets sober? Like, how does that look on the outside? Like, oh, nothing's good for you. And at the end of the day, all it is just bullshit. You know,
Right.
you just get stuck in this like rotation of guilt and questions and this, that, or another. And I'm not presuming to know what your relationship looks like, but it sounds, though it doesn't look like it from the outside for us, it sounds like a whole lot of the struggles we have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I talk a lot about my brother. He doesn't really want to be on a podcast or anything like that, but he lived in active addiction for 20 years. He's been sober for almost 5 years in February, and he's thriving and doing great. But, you know, he went away and got sober. So when Ryan started recovery, that was the first time I lived with someone in recovery. And I remember thinking and telling him, I see why people have like need to go away to get sober sometimes.
Right.
It's not always a need, but like it was difficult for him, still is difficult for me, and navigating these various things. I would find myself getting very like jealous, like, oh, okay, so you just get all this space for your meetings and all of this. And what about me? What about me? And I think it's human nature. And I would throw things in his face like, well, I had to put up with this from you for years, so it's my turn. And I think a lot of that is just still working out all those kinks. And it can be really challenging and really difficult. And, you know, what a lot of people don't understand, and I understand this where you're coming from, honestly, as a wife, and not even talking about sobriety, just as a wife, is you're scared to talk about these things because you don't want people to like hate your spouse or think they're like a piece of shit, you know? But at the same time, you want them to understand that your struggles are very real. And marriage and relationships are complicated, even in the healthiest and best of situations. And when you share time and space with someone and you've been with someone for that long, it's just really hard to break some of that. And I'm not a counselor, but one of the things that we've done, and you can take this or leave it, is we've kind of started like dating each other again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
I'm like, yeah, we have a 13-year-old daughter, and we've been, you know, we got married pretty quickly after we met, but like, ask me out on a date. Talk to me about what your interests are today. So I wish y'all the best of luck. It sounds like you have a good grasp on things, and I can tell y'all love each other very much.
Yeah,
And
we do.
I just wanted you to know you are not alone in that struggle, no matter what it looks like on the podcast and on social media. You are not alone in those struggles.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, those are all great points, Jessica. You know, it's not like I wanted to come here and do this podcast. No offense to either of you. It's very hard to open up, and to be raw and to be honest. But I feel like I'm called to give back, and Ryan knows that feeling. And so I have had several people reach out to me over the last 2 years that have come to me in confidence, that are going through the same thing, and they can relate. And so if I can give anybody, you know, any hope or ideas of what has worked for us, then I'm more than happy to do this. But again, I'm very blessed in my life, in my marriage, and I know that in the last 2.5 years, he's certainly thought more about his drinking than he did prior to this. And really, that's all I want, is for him to experience the growth that we experience. You know, sobriety's like a snowball, right? You with the sobriety in the middle, and as your sobriety continues, it just gets bigger and bigger, and that your mindset, your growth mindset is, you're just striving to get better at everything in life. And so, I see myself much more present whenever we're at family gatherings or with grandkids or with best friends. And I experience true pleasure in life now that it's indescribable unless you've gone through this. And the other thing I wanted to just say was that, this is a journey. This is my journey. And I've been very selfish with it. And it's been good for me. It's been good for the people that know me. But there is something freeing about, I don't want to say I have blinders on, but there's something freeing about keeping that mindset, because I am old enough now where I am nobody's keeper. I'm nobody's mother. My husband, I shouldn't say I'm not my husband's mother. And so his decisions are his decisions. He admits, I told him that I was going to be talking about our journey together on this. And, he admits that he drinks too much, that he'd like to see himself work on that. And it's just not his time right now. So when and if he gets to that point, I hope I can be as supportive to him as he's been to me. But again, there's something freeing about just really focusing on my journey. His life is his life. My life is my life. It comes together in a marriage. But it's okay if we don't agree on everything all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
that is definitely us
Yeah.
to a T. We look like we're tethered together, like I said, for the purpose of the podcast, but 100%. I said on the last podcast, and I'll say it again, like, we kind of ended our last one with saying, to loved ones out there, don't get offended if they don't talk to you about certain things, or you're not the first person they go to. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It actually means they love you a whole lot.
That's right.
And, we're not required to share everything with each other. And it's not always the healthiest option either. I like when he comes to me about things that he's like, I've talked to people on Reframe. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I want to share this with you, because I can tell he's really allowed himself to sit in that. And with my mental health journey, I did that a lot. When I first started on that journey, I was like, and I use this example, this isn't literal, but I'm like, okay, do I really like the color blue? Or have I just been told I like the color blue and now I assume I do? But do I actually like it? Like, I was blonde forever, and the first thing I did was went back to my natural color. And it seems so silly, but you are reconnecting with yourself and relearning who you are. And when you're sharing that with the people around you, it gets very muddled. So I'm all for, having that time and space for yourself. I think it's very healthy, very, very healthy.
Absolutely.
And you just came back not too long ago from like one hell of a trip, if I remember. Was that like a month or two ago?
Yes. So one of my passions is traveling.
Yes.
Yeah.
How was that navigating? It's one thing, like we go on trips, I wouldn't say often, but kind of often. We go for a week, 5 days at a time, maybe even a weekend. But you went for like a few weeks, did you not? How did you navigate that?
Yeah, 3 weeks. First of all, I really think, again, just having to be around alcohol during my entire sober journey, whether it's, at home with friends at our cabin, which usually has friends there. It's just been a constant. We also have a place down in Mexico that we go to 4 or 5 times a year. So I've been on several trips during the last 2.5 years. The first few were terribly difficult, which surprised me, but they were. This last trip was phenomenal. It was almost 3 weeks of trekking through Europe with our best friends. And it was every day there, there was a pub. They've got great bars, the old British pubs. And so, I have no problem being around alcohol right now. It's probably been a year into it. I realized this I've got control over myself. I've got control over what I put in my mouth. And so, yeah, I was with 3 other people who drink, which is fine. And we just had the time of our life. It was fantastic. So we're already planning our next big
That's
trip,
awesome.
probably in the spring. So we're at that
Yeah, and I was
stage in our
very,
life where we can do
very,
that.
very jealous looking at the pictures. That's
Yeah,
for
we'll
sure.
meet you
Yeah.
there. We'll meet you there.
Yeah.
Fine book.
Oh, that looks
We
so
love to
incredible.
travel
Yeah.
as well. It's one of our biggest
Yeah.
passions.
Yeah. And
And my brother.
go ahead.
Oh no! You go ahead. This is your podcast.
No, I
You
was
go.
just going to say again, it was really important for me that once, like month 2, when I started my Instagram, I really bought into that whole mindset of I'm really living my life. Nothing's going to stop me. And so
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've been on some fantastic trips. Yeah. And all alcohol free. Yeah.
And they're more fun alcohol free
Yeah.
too. All I was going to say is my brother came to me. He's coming in town for Thanksgiving. And he was like, I just realized I've never taken a vacation on my own. I've always taken them with other people. And the last vacation he took, he was with someone and he had a great time, but he just kept thinking like, I would have so much more fun if I were here by myself and able to do things. And he doesn't drink or use or anything. And so he booked a flight right after Thanksgiving to Mexico, all by himself in a
Good for
resort.
him.
He's like, I'm going to fly home from your house and I'm going to get my shit together and I'm flying there and I'm going to sit on the beach and look at beautiful people and drink sparkling water. And I am so excited.
Good for
And
him.
I was like, that sounds amazing. It goes back to that whole traveling,
Yeah.
no alcohol, and private and personal time. And
Yep.
I thought it's just fantastic.
Tuesday, I'm meeting my best friend down in Mexico for a week. She and I are just the 2 of us. We've never done it by ourselves down there. And so we are going to have a blast. And I've gotten really good at challenging bartenders. I say, hey, I don't drink. Make me your best non-alcoholic drink. And usually they come up with some pretty good drinks. So yeah.
And I think that's good. We've talked about this because I haven't drank in about 5 months, not for any reason other than I just didn't want to.
Sure.
And I've started doing that too, being
Mhm.
like, what kind of mocktails do you have? And I think that the more people that go and ask for those things, it pushes restaurants and bars. Like they're always going to have alcohol and, that's fine, whatever. But it pushes them to sort of expand and realize there's an entire market and group of people out there that you are missing.
And growing.
Absolutely.
There was a
Majorly
non-alcoholic
growing.
beer
Yeah.
tasting here in
Yep.
Knoxville yesterday. I don't think that you ended up going, but I was like, that's amazing. And I see it more and more. I see more people even getting sober who don't even struggle with alcohol. They're
Yeah.
just starting to recognize it doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make my body feel good. It really just is like poison. And it's just something that I don't want to do. That was
Right.
me. I was like, I have one drink and I'm like, my belly hurts, my head hurts, I'm in a
Yeah.
bad mood. Like I just don't want it anymore. And I really love to see that grow. So you got to let me
Absolutely.
know where in the world is the best to get a cocktail. That's going to be, or a mocktail, excuse me. That's going to be on my list of things. I'll be messaging you being like, okay, what mocktails are we making?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ryan, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So, since the last podcast and you spoke about the pieces all over the floor,
Mhm.
I could really relate to that because sometimes I feel, especially since I've been back, I didn't get on any meetings when we were in Europe. We were traveling all the time, and the last few weeks I've been busy babysitting grandkids and running, to pick up things for the business and such. So, I haven't been really active probably the last 6 weeks in Reframe, and I do miss it, but I feel almost like I needed that to decompress a little. I also find that I don't need to be on the meetings as often as I did. But when I go through that feeling of, gosh, everything's out. What do I do? What do I do? It's usually a call to action. I have found that it's usually a call to action, and I'm not even sure sometimes what I'm called to act upon. So I just try to be very open to what it is. But have you found any relief in that? Do you feel better? Do you feel like now maybe you've got something else you're focusing on, or is it still, sometimes for me that feeling lasts a week or two?
So I've gotten over the hill, which
Good.
is good because I, like you said, planned action. So last week, literally, I think it was the day after I did the podcast that we did that Halloween podcast. I shared in a meeting. I was in a regular men's meeting. I thought this is perfect time. There was hardly anybody sharing. I went ahead and just spilled it all out. Didn't care what I said. Didn't care if it made sense. I just wanted to get it off my chest. Immediately, as soon as I, clicked mute on my phone, I felt better. I thought, oh, so good, so good.
Good.
And then I think the podcast aired that day, and people reached out to me.
Good.
And I got so many messages, IG messages, wow, I can't believe you talked about that. Thank you for being open. I feel the same way. So many people reached out saying, I feel that same way. And then Friday, after getting all these messages, I decided to share again, but I shared in men's and women, open meetings,
Sure.
Alcohol free. And then over the weekend, it's been more people, of both genders, reaching out to me, about the podcast or about me sharing. And I realized, okay, so I have this platform. I can talk, say whatever the hell I want. Not everybody listens to it. Not everybody can do it, can listen to it. But in the meetings, I have everybody's attention. I can see their faces. I need to share more. I've gotten away from it because I do this all the time and I feel like I'm kind of emptying out. But I also need to help that community as well because that's what helps me.
Right.
And once I started realizing, wow, my whole thing was, where's my place in all this? That's what I was thinking. It's like, am I going to do these meetings the rest of my life? And the answer is probably, yeah, I'm probably going to. But I'm not going to worry about the rest of my life. I'm going to worry about today. And that's what I need to worry about. And At the end of the night, I'll start worrying about tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the days stack. I mean, it's kind of how I learned how to become sober. Was not worry about tomorrow. Don't future trip, which I've done before. Bring yourself back to where you're at. Worry about what you can handle today. And then at tonight, I will write down what I'm going to do tomorrow. And if I get to it, great. If not, I'll put it off to the next day.
Right.
And that has really, really calmed me down.
Good.
The community itself is, when they say community is the opposite of addiction, I couldn't agree. I mean, it's like 200%. So just people reaching out to me and me interacting with them, boy, did it get me right back to where I needed to be. I mean, woke up this morning feeling, anxious, excited about, having you on today, which was great. So that was going through my mind and little things needed to do. And it's just like all that just kind of went away.
Good.
And I feel great. I feel so much better.
I do think that those of us that have been on Reframe maybe a little longer than some of the other people, we have a tendency to sit back so that there's space for those people that are really struggling just to get through the hour or the day or the minute or whatever. But I think sometimes we forget how valuable it is to hear from people who have been on Reframe for, a longer amount of time and still realize that, we still need you. We still need our community. We still need to be able to have a voice and to say, this sucks. For the most part, it's been great, but today it just sucks. And I'm as guilty to blame as the next because I usually sit and listen and I try to be supportive, but there's been times where I could have probably shared how I was feeling. And maybe I'll start doing that more, especially in regards to, living with somebody who drinks. And I think that we still have to claim our space, Ryan. I think that's okay.
Yes.
And I think it's super,
100%.
super great for those that, that are new to hear that too. Not that we want to discourage them, not that we want to make them feel like, oh crap, is this ever going to get easy? It's just the reality of life, it ebbs and flows. And I'm glad things are better.
And speaking on that, what kind of advice is something I like to ask people to just get different points of view, but what kind of advice would you give a newcomer right now? Somebody that's just starting out or within 30 days of being sober.
Oh,
what kind
great.
Of advice would you
Okay. Well, I can share what worked for me.
Sure.
My father-in-law passed away 2 years ago, he is somebody that was like a father to me. I loved him dearly. In 43 years of knowing him, we never had one crossword. He's an amazing man. He was also sober for 16 and a half years when he passed away. And one of my most treasured possessions in my life is I got one of his AA sober coins. So that's very special to me. But he gave me some advice, and he said, Lynne, the hardest part of being sober is making the decision to go sober. Once you've said, I'm never drinking again, once you've wrapped your head around there, the rest will fall into place. And so on June 3rd, I said, I am never drinking again. Mm-hmm. And I think it's what carried me through week 5 through 8 was just that attitude of, I can do anything. I can eat all the chocolate. I can Netflix binge. I can do whatever, but I'm not going to drink. So having that mindset has been key for me. The other thing was creating a toolkit of sorts that kept my mouth, my hands, my mind busy. And so it was things like, and Jessica's probably going to say, oh, I wouldn't do that, like adult coloring books. Some of those things that I know you're not crazy about.
I get it. No.
But anything creative, and I also turned the basement into a babe cave. So, what used to be, all the kids
babe
watching.
Wait a minute. I love that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that the other day. I said, I need to put that on my Instagram, a tour of my babe cave.
You do,
mm-hmm.
Yes.
But I go down there and I get creative. So just having that toolkit of things to keep my mouth, my mind, and my hands busy was key. The other thing that worked for me is I'm a list person. Like, I love lists. I'm just crazy about lists because I squirrel, right? It's easy for me to start by washing dishes and somehow I end up, reading a book or, whatever. Yeah. So I make lists. And so I thought I can incorporate that into my sobriety. So I had this little journal that I brought with me everywhere. I put it in my purse because those cravings would just hit at the oddest times, right? So I might pull aside and I'd write down, June 18th, 2022, I feel like driving over and getting, a 6-pack and whatever. And I would just write it down. That made it real for me. That made me, focus on, yes, this is real. This is how I'm feeling. But then I could release it to that notebook. And every time I had an urge, I would just write down in that little notebook and maybe where I was, or maybe what was, what started it, what was the trigger. And that really made me feel powerful. It really made me feel like I was winning over my urges and I could look back. It gave me something to look back. I'm a firm believer that on Reframe, the daily lessons are key for a few reasons. They, just learning about the neuroscience is amazing, but it also is the beginning of forming habits. And we need to retrain, our addictions into healthy habits. So, those are the things that work for me. Of course, community was key. I have 2 accountability partners who I love dearly, who are close in sobriety dates as I am. And we actually met at my cabin this summer in June. There were 5 of us that met up there. It was the first time I've ever had a Reframe meetup because I live in the middle of nowhere in South Dakota. And so that was a real treat that these women took the time and the energy to make a trip to South Dakota to the beautiful Black Hills and spend time with me. So I guess those have been my main strategies that have seemed to work. And of course, lastly, it's your journey. Nobody else's.
Yes.
Focus on your journey.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up, the journal thing too, because that's another thing that kind of got me through last week was just writing this shit out. It's amazing the things you release when you put pen to paper or you just type it out or put it on your phone or whatever. It's incredible.
I have different kinds of journals that I enjoy. I didn't start journaling till that 8th week, and I wished I would have earlier. But besides just a written journal, I have a creative journal. I have a junk journal. Oftentimes it's just images or words that I'm focusing on. I almost get in a meditative state. And they're all things that I will be able to go back and look at and realize, it might have been a trigger day. It might have been, day 600 that I'm celebrating, but every page means something to me. So I'm very grateful for Kevin really promoting journaling and giving me,
big time.
The motivation.
I love that journal meeting really changed me.
Become one of my favorites.
I love it. Love it so much.
Yeah.
Well, we'll switch things up a little bit, get kind of lighthearted, and then we'll get you out of here. But, I do want to bring up one thing. Your last name.
Yeah.
So, you were just destined, right? You were just destined to go down this path with a last name like Doom, correct?
I was doomed. I was doomed.
I was going to say, she's never heard that one before.
Yeah. No, I love my last name. My maiden name was very long. Yeah, my maiden name was Kirk Assler, so it was very long. So
makes me think of Kick-Ass.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Kick-Asser.
So I love my last name.
That's awesome. And now I'm going to ask you something about, you've heard the podcast, so surely you knew I was going to ask this. Going back to your drinking days, you got to have some kind of funny pee story.
I do.
We haven't had a female pee story in a hot second, so I've been excited about this the whole time.
So we a bunch of us college friends, we've got a group of several couples, and we decided we were going to go houseboating on Lake Powell, and we did, and we had an absolute blast. We did 5 couples and got on this big houseboat, and we were having a blast. Every day, each couple was in charge of bringing the food, making the food, and some sort of entertainment. Well, one day we decided that the entertainment was going to be jumping off the houseboat, and we were going to have, a competition of this. And so us girls decided that we were going to one-up the guys by jumping off the houseboat without our swimming suits on. So we all get up there and everybody's jumping off, and I get up and I chickened out, and I had this life jacket. I didn't have it on, but I put it in front of me, and I was so nervous, and I was just so embarrassed, even though I was drinking. I jumped off the houseboat and I peed all the way down in the middle of the air. I was so embarrassed. So that's my peeing story. I never told them. They never knew that I was peeing all the way down into the water. But thank God.
That's smart. Were you already wet from head to toe?
Oh yeah.
Or were you?
Because we were climbing up.
So then she's like, I can totally get away with this. That's a good one.
It is a good one. I like that.
I like that too. I'm trying to envision. See, this is how my brain works. Not to freak out any past guests or discourage anybody from sharing their pee story, but with each guest, I try to envision what the act of the pissing looked like in the moment. Without the anatomy, I'm not picturing. I mean, I guess I'm picturing you naked a little, but not in a bad way. That's amazing.
That's great. I love that one.
And yet again, I will say, the girls on the podcast, you say, "What's your best pee story?" They instantly
got it.
They're like. So many, and the guys are like, "Well, I piss everywhere."
That's right; they do it everywhere.
Yeah,
they just mark.
I've noticed this.
So, to my children who are grown adults now, I apologize for never telling you that. You had to learn it on a podcast.
That'll be all right.
Hey, mom's cool. Okay, we have a 13-year-old, and she comes to me and tells me stuff that I already know, and she tells me like it is brand new information, and I'm like, "Child."
Been there, done it.
Been there and done it.
The crazy Lynne, drinking days, that's for sure.
That's right.
Lynne, I adore you. This has been a phenomenal
This was a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
I mean, and I'm going to say, as a way to really share your story and start being open and transparent, I think this was a beautiful, beautiful moment for you. And thank you. I tell Ryan this. I tell everybody this, thank you for sharing. No one is ever obligated to share. I agree, it's your journey, but for you to share and be open I'm honored, and I'm I just feel very blessed and very thankful that you felt sober as fuck to be the platform where you started that. That makes me feel really good.
Thank you, Jessica. It was a pleasure to meet you. You're just as lovely as I knew you would be. So, Ryan,
wait till you
really
meet me in
out
person.
Yeah. Yeah, she's amazing. And Ryan, it's just been a pleasure to be on this journey with you. You continue to be my inspiration. So thank you. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for both of us.
That's right.
Love you.
Thanks, Lynne. We'll talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Lynne.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
If you love the podcast, which I know you do, please like, subscribe,
and hit that notification bell to
Boom.
get notified every time we post.
That's right. Dropping them, baby. Word.